In Rewind at the Wilson Center, Jane Harman, President and CEO, hosts a national conversation featuring Senator Bob Corker on the AUMF, Authorization for the Use of Military Force, the law that authorized U.S. forces to act against terrorists after 9/11.
Here's a news flash. War powers are divided in the United States Constitution. Congress has the power to declare war, raise and support the armed forces, and allocate war funding. That's Article 1, Section 8, while the President is Commander-in-Chief of the military, Article 2, Section 2. For 200 years, Congress and the President respected this balance. But following World War II, tension escalated when America became involved in the Korean and Vietnam conflicts without a declaration of war. Many members of Congress were upset about an erosion of congressional authority, and so, in 1973, Congress passed the War Powers Resolution by a 2/3 majority over President Nixon's veto. That resolution has been ignored more than followed, but it was certainly an example of Congress reasserting its role. So segue to today's conversation entitled, The AUMF, Reasserting the Role of Congress.
The program began with a keynote from Bob Corker, U.S. Senator from Tennessee and ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
What's happened over time with Congress in general is that we have no ownership whatsoever over the conflicts that exist. And for what it's worth, some people like it that way. We have an outstanding military that is willing to sacrifice life and limb, and we have certainly wonderful foreign service officers. And to have them out in harm's way and the American people not even fully understand why we're doing what we're doing, and certainly for Congress to have no ownership, that is a problem. To move down the path to look at a new authorization for the use of military force that really causes Congress to own the activities that we're conducting around the world and for the American people to be informed of those.
A distinguished panel discussed the provocative topic that touches on foreign policy, defense, the Constitution, and the law.
We are talking about incredibly important, extraordinary legislation that was passed. As Congresswoman Harman reminds us, in the days just after 9/11, this is a very short law.
And Congresswoman Harman talked about the Article 2 Commander-in-Chief Clause power and Article 1 Section 8's power, Congress's power to declare war. But there's a more fundamental point, which is it's Congress's power to make the law.
Because in a funny way, in the heat of the moment after 9/11, and because of this law, we've almost taken a shortcut to sort of reach for that military tool almost as a reflex. And I'm really unconvinced that that military tool is necessarily the best tool for addressing these challenges going forward.
There's a big debate, I can tell, internally going on regarding back to this AUMF, but there's almost no planning that is taking place between the executive branch and Congress to overcome the very things that Sarah's talking about. That is totally irresponsible. And because we're not doing that, I would say that American men and women are losing their lives and limbs, and we are wasting resources because we don't conduct that kind of thoughtful planning.
This is a piece of legislation that, as you mentioned, has authorized the war in Afghanistan, targeted killings in several different countries, the indefinite detention of detainees in Guantanamo Bay. So just saying we're now going to revise the AUMF means you have to resolve all those issues.
That's kind of what we're hired to do, right?
Exactly.
If Congress doesn't take the time through hearings like we had today and other kinds of things to set a context and sort of an order of pyramid of what our national interests are, it's very difficult to make wise decisions during those moments of crisis.
And so one of the hard things when Congress takes up this legislation is thinking, boy, if we authorize this now, what might we possibly be authorizing for years to come that we have no idea could fall within this new AUMF? And how could we ever retrieve that authority back given Article 1, Section 7? And one answer to that Congress has used in the past is the legislative sunset.
We've got some pretty good provisions within the Constitution and the laws of the United States about how we go about using lethal force. And maybe this needs to be something that's much more of a retail authorization going forward than this kind of a wholesale authorization.
You think the architecture of the AUMF itself could be used in a
No, on the contrary. I'm saying repeal it, possibly. I mean, just done.
So I think, again, a repeal or something like that to me could be a little scary. I know there are activities that are taking place that, you know, we rely upon that old AUMF, which is why we're having this debate, to occur. And so I think what would be better would be a replacement of something that's refined.
Congress has declared war a total of 5 times since the founding. We've had over 200 different military operations since the founding. So the idea that there needs to be a declaration of war, certainly not. A state of war may be necessary under international law for certain things, or self-defense and the like, and both of those can come into play in various situations. But again, I think strictly speaking, most of what we're talking about here isn't a legal question as much as it is a policy one.
To watch the entire program, you can go to wilsoncenter.org, the National Conversation, or download the Wilson Center app from iTunes and join the conversation on the Wilson Center's Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Woodrow Wilson Center.